So, okay, give me a minute and we'll kick off. The I'm just waiting to see if everything is set up properly. Okay. Okay, all. Welcome everyone for joining live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and I also am streaming this directly on Zoho webinar. So whether you are here with me live right now or maybe you're watching this as a replay, I want you to drop a one in the chat if this exact scenario has ever happened to you. This is also like for me to have some kind of an audio check. Hopefully, I'm clear and loud to all of you. So if you, so here's the scenario, right? You finally get in a high stakes meeting, but few minutes into your update, you're talking about an update. Say you were talking about a high stake project that stakeholders are interested in. And then you start to notice this, right? Your senior boss, who's in the room, starts to break eye contact. Maybe they're checking their phone or the watch. And then the ultimate thing happens, the worst thing that you could expect, that someone cuts you off mid sentence and says, "Can you just please get to the bottom line?" Right? Let me see those ones if you've experienced this in your meetings, especially if it was a high stakes meeting and somebody cut you off to say that, "No, just please get to the point." Right? So let me tell you this, right? If you are a quiet, thoughtful professional, you don't over explain because you like hearing yourself talk. That's definitely not it. But most of us do it because you want to show your work, you want to sort of promote your work, you want to prove your point and explain where you're coming from. You want to explain the background, how you went about it, right? That's the reason you say it. But in the executive suite, over explaining isn't a personality quirk. I'll tell you that, right? It is the number one killer of your leadership presence, your executive presence. It makes you look like a worker bee decision maker. And if you ever felt the sting of being tuned out, while the loudest person in the room gets all the attention and the credit, even for that matter, right? This session, I believe, is exactly for that kind of a person, right? And before we jump into the solution, hit that like button in the stream, uh, show some love, all right? Go with emoticons that you can work with and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you are notified every time I go live, right? And this space is built specifically to help you turn your quiet competence into undeniable executive authority. So, what are we going to talk about today? Let me bring the screen up. There you go. So we are going to talk about executive presence for quiet leaders. Today, we are permanently fixing how you communicate upward. No more getting talked over. Yeah. I'm giving you three simple moves to project massive executive weight without ever raising your voice. And that's it. And I'll tell you what, this has got nothing to do with you being loud or somebody else being loud. So I'll talk about the three shifts. Yeah. So what are the three shifts? First one is the headline, right? And then the second one is the pause, and the third one, the yield, like I like to call it, right? So let's get going, right? So the number one is the headline first protocol, right? What does that mean? Now, most managers love giving background stories, and I'm not saying stories are bad. Stories are good if they are executed well. If they you create a good story arc, that's the best way to get across your point, right? But this is a high stake meeting, right? So senior executive, you need to understand is that in these high stakes meeting, the senior most person or the leader that for whom this is going to be the most beneficial conversation, they are not looking for all of the stories or the whys and what's behind a conclusion. They just want to get to the conclusion, right? They value their time and they want to get to know what exactly is going to happen. They want those quick bullet points. So imagine this, right? Imagine a loud director of that in that meeting suddenly wants to change a major project plan right before the deadline, right? Let me ask in the live chat now, when someone tries to derail your project at last minute, what is your immediate instinct? Do you argue the details or do you freeze up? You're taken aback. Type it in the chat and I'll probably go through that soon enough. Yeah, there is a delay between when you put in something on the chat and when I can see that chat, because I'm streaming live on three different platforms. It takes a while to get through. I think about 20-30 seconds, but anyway, put it in the chat, right, or the comment section. Now, I'll tell you this. Typically, in those kind of situation, when you have a loud senior leader, speak over you, typically a manager starts listing 20 little reasons why the team can't do certain thing. When they try, you are being rebutted or they're challenging you with a new plan altogether, right? Typically, what you do is you go listing down why you can't do certain thing, right? The senior most person, the senior leader in that meeting, they'll stop listening to you after reason number two. I can guarantee you that. But here is a simple move. Don't argue the little details. Wait for in the conversation and drop a clear strategic sentence. That is what changes everything. Paused and said, the new direction that you're talking about risks our timeline. Let's stick to the baseline proposal to ensure we deliver. And that's it. I paused and I didn't say anything after that. Right? Now think about it. That what I said is direct. It is an immovable statement. What I did there was give them the destination first. Right? That's what the headline first protocol mean. I gave them the destination, and if they have clarifying question, let them ask for the journey, right? If they want the details of hows, what's, and whys, they can ask the questions. That is why that is what headline first means. Deliver the powerful statement, then stay silent. Don't have to engage in any other conversation yet, right? Give the space for that silence. And this is where move number two comes in, right? Now, when I said stay silent, I know some of you thought it to be a little cringy, right? And that's where we move to the strategic pause. Because the headline only works if you master the pause. Think about this. What happens right after you push back with a strong statement like what I just said? Put it in the chat if you can think of what that could be. I'll tell you what, the room in my situation, this happened exactly as I'm going to say. And I know that this is how it is going to be for 90% of the situation. The room that you are in, after you drop a statement like that, is going to go dead silent. It's going to go quiet, right? And I want everyone watching to be honest in the comments right now. How does a long silence in a meeting make you feel? I know I took this poll a while back to a lot of my, clients that speak with me, and I can tell you 99% of them, whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, more so I think for extrovert, there's anxiousness. So if you feel anxious, type anxious. But if you feel powerful, type powerful in the chat, right? Now the thing is, most people, that dead air feels like a threat, right? There's absolute silence, nobody's talking or bringing in their point of view. The immediate instinct in that dead silence is panic, anxiousness, there is anxiety, and you want to fill in the silence with some rambling, right? Most often than not, it is going to be a rambling. They start saying unnecessary things like, oh, it's mostly excuses like, well, what I mean is that the team is really tired, or the team is stretched pretty thin, we don't have the time or the bandwidth. Stop doing that. First thing you do is let that silence do the heavy lifting. Silence is power, right? Let that silence do the heavy lifting. When you deliver the bottom line, the big statement, hold eye contact and stay completely quiet for a full 3 seconds. And I can tell you, 3 seconds, you may think of 3 seconds. But I'll tell you, in that situation, it'll feel like an eternity. In fact, it could go longer as well, but let that sit. Let that silence sit. But what it does, that silence, what it does is it projects absolute confidence. Silence forces others to lean in and respect your weight. In this case, weight is more about the weight you have created with the silence, right? They are waiting for you to say something. The heavy sentence that you put in earlier, they are looking forward to you following through with that. But give that 3 seconds. So you just hold that weight. This is exactly what I did in that scenario. Now, what if the loud manager that is also in that meeting room tries to talk over your silence? Because I can tell you, most often than not, those are those extrovert leaders who can't take silence no matter from where it originated, right? So they start to want to talk. So the move number three, hold on. Yeah. The move number three is yield to win. Look, your instinct might be to raise your voice, to fight for the floor. You want to sort of come back, right? You're looking for a comeback after you have been rebutted. Somebody speaks over that silence. Don't. Remember that you cannot outshout a shouter. Instead, simply stop talking. Yield the floor completely to them. Yield the floor completely to them and let them finish their interruption. Then wait 1 full second, maybe longer. Just give it some time to sit, right? And smoothly resume exactly where you left off. And in my case, I just calmly repeated what I had said earlier. I said, as I was saying before we paused, let's stick to the baseline proposal that I brought in. And that's it. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room to control it. You just need to be the most grounded person. So now, when you combine, let me forward, but stay with it. Now, what happens is when you combine the headline, the pause, and the yield, you stop looking like a task manager and start looking like an held my ground. The project sponsor, who was the senior most person in that meeting room, simply looked at that person who was interrupting and said, just please listen to the full proposal and we can stress test it later. And that is it. Now, that is executive presence, right? People look at you because you bring silence in a storm. You bring firm presence when there is chaos all around you. And if you got any value out of these moves today that I spoke about, the shifts that I was speaking about, make sure to like this stream right now and share it with a colleague and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next strategy. And I'll tell you this, I'll add on to this, right? Mastering your presence in these meetings is just the step one, right? It's something that I believe everybody needs to excel at. But to truly get unstuck and secure your next big role, if you're hunting and looking for a role, you've applied for it, you are preparing yourself for the interview, you need a system to stand out. So I'm going to host a new free webinar that breaks down how you can have an unfair advantage in interviews that will make you the obvious choice for any role that you apply for. Right? The link is in the description that I've given you. Grab your free spot and let's map out your next. I had a little bit of an interruption in the feed. Okay, folks, looks like I have some issues with my live feed today. right? For the benefit of everybody on here, let me do this. Thank you for being here, folks. I really do appreciate. Let me just go back. Yeah, I want to go through this fairly quickly. Hey, do me a favor. I'm gonna try this again, right? Those of you, I hope you can see and hear me loud and clear. Please give a one on the chat, please. Number one, just put it on the chat. Let me see. It may take a while for the chat to show up on my side, but it's okay. I'm gonna, it looks like there has been a lot of issues with my live stream anyway. I might as well just give it the time. Yeah. Okay. Looks like I have a clear feed at this time. I'll go over this. Yeah. Don't worry about it. We will cover whatever I had covered. I'm sort of going to go over this again. Thank you. I can see ones coming up. Okay. I might have to edit the final version of this on the stream, but that's okay. So let me go over this, right? So I want you to imagine this scenario, right? Where you finally get the floor in a high stakes meeting. You're in a big project meeting, possibly, right? And there are very high level senior leaders in that meeting waiting for this update to come through from you. But few minutes into your update, you see those shifts that likely is bound to happen, especially if you're not used to knowing how to create executive presence, right? How to build your presence and have an influence in the audience that is in front of you. So you start to notice those minor shifts. They start to check their phones or the watch, right? And the worst thing is that could happen is when somebody cuts you off while you were speaking mid sentence, they just interrupt you and then they say, can you just get to the point? What are you trying to say, right? So that is when it starts to hit you, right? And if you are a quiet, thoughtful professional, or I more likely than not, you are an introvert, you know for a fact that you don't over explain because you like hearing your self talk. You do it because you want to show your work, you want to prove your point, you want to prove that your team's done the work or you have done the work, and explain where you're coming from, what's the history behind it, right? But in the executive suite, when you have high senior leaders, high stakes meetings, right? Over explaining isn't a personality quirk. It's not something that is looked upon as a good thing. It is actually the of number one killer of your leadership presence. It makes you look like a worker, right? A worker bee. It's just one of those other employees, right? You just sort of blend in. You don't stand out. And now, what you really want to be seen as is a decision maker, right? And think about this. Keep that in your mind, right? You want to be a decision maker and not just another employee. And if you've ever felt the sting of being tuned out while the other person in the room, there are quite a few people in the room, very likely, there is always going to be one of those people, or maybe more than one, who's loud, right? They overpower the conversation in the room. And they usually get all the attention when they start speaking. They may even you know, take away some of the credit. This session is specifically for those kind of people who want to keep that attention to themselves. And before we jump into the solution, I talk about all the solution and the three shifts that I'm going to talk about. Please hit the like button on the stream, right? Subscribe to the channel as well. Click the bell icon so you are notified every time I go live with a new video. Now, those of you who are really interested, right? This space is specifically built to help you turn your quiet competence into undeniable executive authority. That's the whole purpose of this channel, right? And today, We're going to permanently fix how you communicate upward to your leaders above you, right? No more getting talked over, no more being overpowered by the loud noises. And I'm going to give you three simple moves to project massive executive presence, the massive weight that you can bring in without ever raising your voice. So there is a lot of confusion out there where people think that being loud is the way you can build your presence. And the truth can't be farther from that, right? The three shifts are the headline, the pause, and the yield. Yeah. Hold on. Let me bring the. Yeah. So it's basically the headline, the pause, and the yield. Of course, the headline first protocol, the strategic pause, and yield to win are the three methods that I'm going to talk about. So if you're ready, I'm happy to move on to the next point. Shall we move on? Giving background stories. And I'm not saying stories are bad, right? Stories are good. If you create a very good story arc, and that is a way to, express your point of view with stories, and it can be really, really powerful. You need to know if there is a time and place for that, if that is the time and place for it. High stakes meeting where there are senior executives just waiting for an outcome, they're not looking for stories entirely. You can give the stories, but the first thing you do is drop the headline first, right? Because executives are just looking for conclusion. They want to know what to expect from that conversation. Yeah. So deliver the destination, right? So what does that mean? Now I'll go with a quick story. Imagine a loud leader in the room, a director, right, a senior director, suddenly wants to change a major project plan right before the deadline, and you are talking about the project plan. Let me ask this to the live chat again, right? So if you have someone who tries to derail your project at the last minute, what is your immediate instinct? Do you argue the details or do you freeze up? You get all taken aback. Type it in the chat. Is it argue or freeze up? Yeah, just put in one of those two sentences. I'll tell you, most leaders, typically what happens is a manager will start listing 20 little reasons why the team can't do it, right? The boss in the room or the senior most person, the leader in the room, stops listening to you in the second reason itself. They don't have the time for it. But here is a simple move that you can do, right? Don't argue the little details. Wait for a gap in the conversation and drop one clear strategic statement. And here is an example that actually happened to me, right? I was presenting this high stakes project plan uh, when one of the loud person in the room, right? So the dominant voice in the room suddenly threw out a new idea that would derail the entire project, right? In my team and me, we had come prepared. We know exactly what to do and how it's going to turn out. But what I did when that person started to make a mess out of that whole plan was, instead of arguing, I simply stated this one statement. Right? I said, that new direction that you're talking about risks our timeline. Let's stick to the baseline proposal to ensure we deliver. Right? So that's what I said. That's all. I didn't say anything else. One second. Right? That's the only statement I put. And I just waited. I paused there. Now, in that statement, notice that that is a very direct statement. It is like an immovable statement. There is nothing more to discuss there, right? I put that statement as a full stop statement. What I did there was give them the destination first, right? So that is what destination first means, right? Now, if they have a question, they want to clarify something, let them ask for the journey, right? So if they want to know what, how, why, what, all of that, that is something that they can clarify with me, and I'll be happy to answer them. But the fact that I put the destination first, that is what I mean by headline first, right? That's what it means. Deliver the powerful statement and then stay silent. You just need to pause. Don't try to fill in the gap. And that is our second shift, right? This is where the move number 2 comes in, which is the strategic pause, because the headline will work only if you master the pause. Think about this. what happens right after you push back with a strong statement like what I just said, right? I just put a statement, that a full stop statement, no more discussion kind of a statement, right? The fact is that the room goes dead silent, it goes quiet, nobody knows how to respond to that, right? And I want everyone watching this live stream, right, to be honest in the comments right now. How does, or if you are watching the recording, right, how does a long silence in a meeting make you feel, right? I believe it's one of the two things. One is you feel anxious with the silence, right? You want to fill in that gap. The other one is where you have practiced this skill. If you are part of my community, you know that this is a powerful place to be, right? So if you feel powerful in that moment, type powerful in the chat, right? For most quiet professionals, or in fact, most professionals, introvert or extrovert doesn't matter, right? That dead air feels like a threat. It feels unsettling. And the immediate instinct is to panic, that anxiousness to fill in the silence with some rambling. Most of you will start saying unnecessary things like, the reasons, excuses. It'll sound like excuses. Well, you'll say something like, well, what I mean is the team is really tired. They are already stretched thin. We don't have the bandwidth. Stop it. Let that silence do the heavy lifting. When you deliver your bottom line, the impactful statement at the beginning, hold eye contact and stay completely quiet for full 3 seconds. 3 seconds rule, right? Either stay, it could be longer as well, right? But I'll tell you what, if you think 3 seconds is not a problem, if you are in that situation, if you have been in that situation, 3 seconds will feel like an eternity if you're not used to this, right? But what it does, if you are able to stay back and hold that silence for full 3 seconds, what it does, it projects absolute confidence. It will tell people around you without you saying anything that you have the confidence in that statement. Silence forces others to lean in and respect your weight. Oh, by the way, when I say weight, I'm not talking about physical weight, the weight of your sentence, right? That is exactly what I did. I just stayed silent. Now, there could be a problem, right? So now what if that loud manager, this loud person in the room tries to talk over that silence? They just start to dominate the room again. That is where, sorry, I'm moving the slides a little late. Apologies for that. That is where yield to win comes in. Your instinct might be to raise your voice, talk over that other person and see if you can dominate the room. I'll say don't try that. Don't even think about it, right? Remember that you cannot outshout a shouter, a professional shouter. So don't fight the floor. Just leave it as it is. Instead, what you do is simply stop talking, right? Yield the floor completely to them. Let them finish their interruption. Then wait 1 single second again. Then wait for a second. Don't have to, as soon as you find the gap, you don't have to fill that silence again. Just hold that silence and smoothly resume exactly where you left off. In my case, right, I just calmly repeated what I said earlier. And I said this exact statement, right? I said, as I was saying before we paused, let's stick to the baseline proposal that I brought in before, right? I just stuck to that and nothing. Didn't say anything else. Point being, you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to control it. You just need to be the most grounded person. Remember the word being grounded. Now, what happens is when you combine the headline, the pause, and the yield, you stop looking like a manager and start looking like an senior executive. You will start feeling, and your presence will feel like an executive. That is what is executive presence, because you would have grounded yourself in that moment. In my situation, after I held my ground, the project sponsor, who was the senior most person in the room, simply looked at that interrupter who was being loud, and he said to that person, and he said, please, please listen to the proposal and we can test it later. I just want you to stop, right? And that's it. And that is it. That is what executive presence feels like. It should have, that's exactly how you should feel, right? If you got value from these moves that I spoke about today, make sure to like the stream right now, share it with a colleague, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next strategy when I go live with that, right? Mastering your presence in these meetings is just step one, by the way, right? It's one way, one part of it. But to truly get unstuck and secure your next big role, you need a system to stand out. Yeah. What I mean by that is, say you're applied for a role, you're waiting for the interview, preparing for the interview, and you know from your past that interviews are never nerve wracking for you. You almost always feel like your mouth is dried up. You don't know exactly how to answer, or you're worried about what if I'm thrown away by a very surprising question. I'm going to host a free webinar that breaks down how you can have an unfair advantage in interviews that will make you the obvious choice for any role that you apply for. It doesn't matter which level, what kind of role. But if you want to excel in interviewing, if you want to get that unfair advantage that nobody else is going to get using AI, I'm going to help you augment AI in your interviews, not while you're interviewing. I'm not talking about cheating, in your preparation. Click the link in the description. I've already posted that. Grab your free slot and let's map out your next career leap, right? Thank you all for hanging out with me in live today. I know that there was some issues with the stream and I had to repeat the whole session again, but I hope you took a lot of value from this conversation today. I would say keep leading with impact, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. I'll hang around for a little bit more to see if there are any other questions or points that you want to talk about. And if you feel like there is another topic that you would like me to take up in the next video, next live stream, just let me know and I'll be happy to take that up. But if there isn't anything else, uh, let's see. Yeah, I don't see anything else. So just so I bring back I forgot to move the slides again, but yeah, build your unfair advantage with on interviews, folks. Yeah, this is your opportunity. The webinar is free. I should actually charge for it, but anyway, yeah, the link is in the description. Register it. I haven't created the description page for that webinar well enough, but that'll come up. Just book your slot. And yeah, you will get the invites after all of that is done. So if there is, I don't see anything else on the feed today. So if there is nothing else, thank you all so very much. I will speak with you in the next video. Have a good time. Take care. Bye.